The street along the canal was quiet most days, except for the sound of bicycles and boats passing by. Old Lydia sat by her window every morning with a cup of tea in her hands. Across the street, another window always caught her eye, the one with the blue curtains. Behind those curtains lived Jean. He was around her age, maybe a few years older, with gray hair and a careful way of moving around. They had never spoken, but for 3 years they had exchanged small nods through the glass. Every morning when Lydia opened her curtains, she would see Jean doing the same. When she watered her little plants, she noticed he did too. When she smiled, he smiled back. That was enough, until one day. It started with a piece of paper. She tore a page from her notebook and wrote, "Good morning." Then she taped it to her window. Jean noticed it after a few minutes. He leaned forward, squinting through his glasses. Then he disappeared for a while. When he returned, he held up his own note. "Good morning to you too." Lydia laughed softly. Her heart felt lighter than it had in years. The next day she wrote, "Beautiful weather." He replied, "Too hot for tea, but I'll drink it anyway." And so it began, their window notes. They learned about each other through pieces of paper and crooked handwriting. Jean had been a fisherman before retiring. His wife had long passed away. Lydia had worked as a chef in a restaurant, and her husband had died when she was 45. She had one daughter who lived abroad and called once a month. Sometimes their messages were funny, with jokes about the neighborhood cats or the noisy pigeons. Sometimes they were serious. "I miss cooking for two," Lydia once wrote. Jean's reply came quickly. "Me too." Every morning when the sunlight hit the windows, they waited for the right moment to exchange notes. The whole street must have thought they were mad, two lonely elders speaking through glass, but neither of them cared. One rainy afternoon, something unusual happened. Lydia didn't see Jean by the window. His curtains were closed. She waited through lunch, through the storm, through the long evening. Still, no sign of him. The next morning she woke early and checked again. Curtains were still closed. She was worried that he might be ill, or maybe worse. She stood by her window, clutching her teacup. The rain had stopped, but the street was empty. On the third day, she wrote a note anyway. "Are you all right?" She taped it up and waited. Hours had passed. The sky turned orange, and just when she was about to give up, the blue curtains twitched. Jean appeared, looking pale and tired. He held up a note with shaky hands. "I'm fine. Fever, nothing serious." Relief washed over her. She smiled and wrote, "Rest well, old friend." His reply made her laugh. "Old? Speak for yourself." After that, something changed between them. Their notes grew longer, more personal. Lydia told him about her daughter in Canada, how she rarely visited but always sent Christmas gifts. Jean shared stories about his fishing boat and how he used to get caught in heavy storms. He expressed his love for the sea, but he's now too old to work on the boat. One day, she asked him, "Do you ever feel lonely?" He took a long time to answer. Finally, his paper went up. Only until you write hello. She pressed her lips together to hide a smile. That night, she dreamed of her late husband for the first time in years. But in the dream, his face was blurry, and a man with silver hair stood by the window instead. Months passed, and seasons changed. The street was filled with snow, then warm sunlight again. The notes continued, hundreds of them now. Lydia kept them all in a box under her bed. She called it her window diary. Then one morning, she found a surprise. Jean's note wasn't the usual kind. It was written in big and bold letters. It said, "Would you like to have tea with me? Not through glass, but in person? If yes, open your window tomorrow at 10. For 3 years, she had grown used to his company from a distance. What if meeting in person ruined it? What if there was silence or disappointment? But her heart tells her, you've already waited long enough. At 10 a.m., she opened her window. He waved from across the street. A shy smile spread across his face. Jean showed up at Lydia's door, holding a small thermos and 2 teacups. Lydia greeted him with a bright smile. "You must be Lydia," he said softly. "And you must be the man with the blue curtains," she replied. For the first time, they met face to face. Up close, he looked older than she imagined. They both laughed, the awkwardness melting away. He poured tea into her cup, strong and sweet, with a bit of ginger. "My favorite," she said in surprise. "I know. You mentioned it once, in a note." He smiled. They sat by her window together, watching the world outside. For once, there was no paper between them. After that day, Jean often came by, sometimes for tea, sometimes to help her water her plants or fix a broken chair. Their friendship grew deeper. Neighbors began to notice the 2 old souls who smiled more than they used to. But time, as always, had its own plans. One morning, she held up a note that said, "Good morning, Jean." He frowned, looked confused, then smiled awkwardly. She thought maybe he was being playful, but the next day, his note said, "Nice to meet you." Her heart dropped. She wrote, "It's me, Lydia." Jean wrote back, "Of course. I remember now," but his eyes told her he didn't. Over the next few weeks, his messages sometimes made little sense. He repeated questions he'd already asked, like, "Do you have family?" He even wrote, "I used to fish, I think." Lydia felt tears burn behind her eyes as she watched him struggle to remember things that used to come easily. She began to write simpler notes, short and cheerful. "Tea today? The flowers are blooming. Your shirt is nice." She didn't want him to feel embarrassed, and yet, every day he still smiled when he saw her notes, even if he didn't always remember what they meant. Then one afternoon, he didn't appear again. His curtain stayed closed for 2 days. When he finally came to the window, his note said, "I'm sorry if I forget your name sometimes, but I know you're my friend." That night, Lydia opened the box under her bed and reread every message they had shared. She realized the notes weren't just memories. They were proof of everything he had been, everything he still was. The next morning, she sent him a special note. It said, "I'll remember for both of us." He read it slowly, his lips moving as if tasting the words. Then he nodded, smiling, and held up a simple reply, "Thank you." One morning, Lydia woke up and found his window closed again. No blue curtains moving, no familiar shadow. She waited. 1 day, 2, 3. The street felt quiet without his presence. She finally decided to cross the street. At his door, she met a young woman, his niece. The woman had been crying. She told Lydia that Jean had passed away quietly in his sleep 3 nights earlier. The fever had returned, but he hadn't told anyone. Lydia felt weak. The young woman helped her sit down. Before she left, the niece handed her a small box. "He wanted you to have this. He said you'd understand," she said. Back in her room, Lydia opened the box. Inside was a stack of notes, all of her messages, each one he had ever taped to his window. And on top, one final letter in his handwriting. "Dear Lydia, if you are reading this, I must have gone where no notes can reach. But please don't be sad. You gave me more joy than I ever thought I'd have again. You made me feel seen, alive, and young at heart. Every morning I waited for your words. Every night I thanked the stars for your window light. Keep smiling. Keep your window open. Someone might be watching just like I did. With love, always, Jean." That evening, Lydia sat by her window with a candle burning softly beside her. Across the street, his window was dark, the curtains unmoving. She placed one last note on her window. It simply said, "Thank you for finding me."
Question 1. What did Lydia usually hold while sitting by her window? A. A book. B. A cup of tea. C. A flower. Two. How did Lydia and Jean first begin communicating? A. Through phone calls. B. By sending letters in the mail. C. By sharing notes on their windows. Three. What was written on Lydia's first note? A. Good morning. B. Hello, neighbor. C. How are you? 4. What was Jean's reply to her first note? A. Good morning to you too. B. Nice to meet you. C. What a surprise. 5. What was Jean's job before retiring? A. A baker. B. A fisherman. C. A shop owner. 6. What did Lydia do before she retired? A. She was a chef. B. She was a nurse. C. She was a librarian. 7. What did Lydia call the box where she kept all the notes? A. The memory box. B. The friendship box. C. The window diary. 8. What happened when Jean got sick the first time? A. He went to the hospital. B. He closed his curtains for several days. C. He stopped writing forever. 9. What did Lydia write to comfort Jean when he started forgetting things? A. Don't worry. B. You'll get better soon. C. I'll remember for both of us. 10. What did Jean's niece give Lydia after he passed away? A. A small box of notes. B. A photo of him. C. His diary.
Thanks for watching. Remember to